wanting to hear your thoughts. Now, obviously, we've got to be very careful how we word certain
Yeah,
things, and
yeah.
we're doing that. But just let's go back to the original headline of the 69.23% result. And when all that kicked off, did you see any of that, or was it just life just running too fast for you to
Yeah, yeah, I was made aware of what happened to her. I mean, I, I've always made it clear my stance on the child in question, and that she is not the child in question. I've always sort of made that clear, in my opinion. Um, and the last conversation I had with her, when I think she had just returned from the house in question where she doorstepped someone, and I did give her a stern warning: be very, very careful. These are highly litigious people and very well connected, and um, you know, be careful of your course of conduct. Uh, and then the next thing, I've been made aware, and I've seen because it's all over the media that she's not only she arrested, and I got a message of someone actually saying that she'll be bailed out, and I went, she won't be bailed out. She can't be bailed out, and there's a reason for that, because she's a foreign national with no permanence in the United Kingdom. So she's deemed what they call a flight risk, and the person of no fixed address. So, uh, and what she's been arrested for could carry a 10-year sentence. So this could well be a Crown Court issue, and there's also public protection concerns here. So it's undoubted that she will be, unless she's got a bailable, verifiable address in the United Kingdom that the prosecution are happy with, she will be remanded in custody.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's possibly glimmers of hope, maybe on uh, that being resolved. Hopefully, we'll have updates in the next few days. And I imagine you're taking this from very much from how things are right now. You're looking at the facts that you have right now, and as the facts are right now, you're exactly right. There is no fixed address.
Yeah, and we've got to look at Julia herself. I did put a question to her because
Yeah,
I doubted her claims, and I made it clear. It's no reflection on her as a person. She's a very likable, intelligent, and sweet person. So this isn't in a character assassination on her. But I did ask her straight up, "Are you the victim of child abuse?" And she did confirm that, um, incestuous abuse. So along with that, you're going to have mental health issues, and there's certain conditions that sort of can be synonymous with that. Things like bipolar, schizophrenia, delusional disorder, and what we find also with people that have got a thing called DID, they can offset one of their alters into someone else, because that will explain and give them solace inside that if they are someone else, then they can detach themselves from the onus being that of their own real family, when it should have been lovely, caring, and nurturing, and it
yeah.
wasn't. But if you can offset it and say, well, if I'm this person, come from a different parentage, then that would explain it. Um, so I think in her mitigation, there may well be some mental health things that could be not only mitigation,
Yeah.
it might also be a lawful defence, because what people tell you they are, um, and what really they are, and what they've got in the background, in the closet, or on their medical records, are two different things. And I've
I
spent
agree.
long enough with survivors of abuse to know that what they tell you is sometimes a very small percentage of what the case really is.
Let's expand on that a little bit more, John. I think everyone in the world's guilty of having what they project publicly and what they have as themselves. And, you know, John's breaking down of an analogy of what happens to a lot of survivors, right? And we're just going to talk through that, and then we will circle back to the whole DNA thing, because, the side chat saying, well, regardless of mental health or anything like that, this alleged DNA result, which we will get to, everyone, don't worry. John
Yeah, yeah,
Cooper,
and I can. there's something that I should have said from the start when she was pursuing the DNA issue.
Yep.
And that's if.
Wait, you've gone quiet, John.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now, mate.
Yeah, sorry. Sometimes I turn up. Now you share your DNA with your parents 50-50, although the majority of your genes, your genetics, come from your mother, and that's because the egg has got more prominence than the sperm has. So you're going to take on board more from your mum, but your DNA is split half and half. Right. So if we look at it this way, if I claim, say that Sean Connery is my father.
Yeah.
All right. And I want to get a strand of Sean Connery's hair. Sean Connery said, "No effing way, John Wedger, you're crazy. No way, it's not happening." Well, what is wrong in me getting a DNA strand from my own biological, so-called or whatever father's hair?
Correct.
So what Julia could have done, if there was a doubt, and there is a doubt, whether or not this said person is her mother. Well, what about the supposedly true mother getting the DNA from her? And if there is a 50% match, then that line of inquiry is finished and it's closed. And the likelihood of her getting her own mother's hair, even if it's outright asking or it's by deception, going around there and taking the hairbrush. When we deal with missing persons, murdered persons, and the like, when we do family liaison inquiries, we go around and we seize toothbrushes, we seize hairbrushes, because it's got what's called retrievable DNA from it. So she could have done that, and that would have been a line of inquiry that, as an investigator, I'll look at. You don't always have to look at what you haven't got. Look at what you have got.
Okay.
And what she has got is recourse to her own mother's DNA, a so-called mother's DNA, but that doesn't seem to have been pursued. So maybe an inference can be drawn there as to what the truth is.
Yeah, it's a very complicated situation, I think, for a lot of people, because I've worked very closely with Julia since we all came together on Sean's channel, and I've lost absolute interest in the very sad story of the little girl at the center of all this, who, massive question mark as to what happened to her. It's all about Julia for me, John, right? And it's about the truth. You know what I mean? And do you not think that if you were Julia's mum or dad and the Daily Mail published something about DNA being 69%, that one of her parents isn't her parents, would you not just take a spite test at that point? Do you not think that DNA result of, and again, I'm not a DNA expert, John, and I know you're probably not either. We are going to bring on some experts this week, and if you'd like to be part of that, let me know, because we just want to get some answers on, if you have a natural conception, how the DNA breaks down, if you have other kinds of conceptions, or if it's just getting all the variables. Do you know what I mean? Because it could be massive, it could be nothing. We could be looking at something that we're all just not educated enough to really understand. But for me, it seems to be a big number, right? And I'm not going to pretend to know what that really means. So you don't feel pressure to do the same. But were you taken aback by that? Were you sort of...
I've not fully looked into the stats on it, but however, her own supposed biological mother and father would put an end to it then and there. And if it wasn't 50-50, then of course it's got to come from somewhere else. But I would start off with the probables. It's like when you're doing an investigation, start with reasonable before you look at the unreasonable. But it doesn't look like the reasonable has been checked out as yet. But I mean, the thing is, what we've got to look at now is, what is our position?
Yep. Okay.
Now, where do we stand now? Now, from what I've heard, it's 4 cases of harassment.
Yep.
But someone also has said it's stalking.
Stalking
Now,
and harassing, yeah.
Yeah. Now, stalking is harassment, but it's an aggravated form of harassment. So, definitively, stalking is unwanted behaviour carried out by obsessive or fixated individuals whose actions disrupt the victim's lives, and it has to cause the usual things on a public order stuff: alarm, distress, but with stalking it's or fear of violence. So we have stalking carries 10-year sentence. The aggravated with the fear of violence carries 14 years. And the courts can deal with it in the usual ways of she can be found not guilty. She can be found culpable, but by reasons of diminished responsibility and everything else, that she is actually not guilty. So she uses what they call a lawful defence. Or the court find in her favour. But also what can be issued is what's called an SPO, a stalking prevention order. So the court can issue that. And so when we look at stalking and harassment, there's got to be an obsession with a person. There's got to be repeated. There's got to be a course of conduct, as we say legally. And it's got to be unwanted behaviour. Now, when she did attend the venue of a certain woman, a certain parent, was she wanted there? Well, no, she wasn't. Then we've got to legally argue, was Julia's behaviour obsessive or fixated? Okay, and did it cause the victim of this mother alarm, distress, or fear of violence? Well, from what Julia said herself, there did seem to be some sort of alarm and distress because there was tears shed and stuff like that. Fear of violence, I very much doubt it. I don't think the aggravated form of stalking exists here. So I think the 14-year one will be ruled out. But when we look in her favour, only 6% of reported cases actually go to court. Only 6%, and out of all the reported cases of stalking, only 1.4% result in a conviction. So the favours are pretty, that is pretty much in her favour. But that'll be down to the police doing their job and how much evidence they have. So when she attended the first time, was that a course of conduct? No, it wasn't. It was a start maybe of a course of conduct. And her flying out from Poland to Bristol, and I'm just assuming that's what happened because I've had no communication with her.
I think that's right. Yeah, I think it was directly from Poland. Yeah, I think you're right in that.
Yeah. So was she going out there to continue a course of conduct? If that's the case, how did the police know? So there could have been some monitoring of social media. And when we look at stalking itself, legally it can be split into 4 categories. So we can have surveillance, so you can surveil someone, and that can be done electronically. So with the stuff that she has done on social media, which is quite extensive, and the stuff that we've all sort of been connected with, whether directly or indirectly with her, will that be used in her evidence against her? It may well be. And it may well be that the police have in some way monitored this show, Sean's show, stuff like that. Do you know what I mean? So it's always, and I did recall saying to her, one of them, just be careful, because it's not that you get caught straight away. If things get reported, the police do a collation process. So that they'll be collating evidence. What I find concerning here is did they know? Did they have information? Did someone inform the police? Is there an informant working here? Is a co-defendant? Who is this person? Why did the police pull her up at the airport? Because If they did, that means I would think the course of conduct was already legally complete. So there may well have been more than one instance regarding his family, which is caused by Julia, which has caused alarm, distress, or fear of violence. But we won't know that until the actual defence statement is put out there. But we have another thing called life invasion.
Okay.
Now that could be loitering or unwanted presence outside someone's house. I think legally you can pretty much tick that box if we was to look at what we know so far. I don't want to bolster up the case for the prosecution at all, but I'm just looking at factually what has gone on. I think her presence.
Do you think, though, if we look at how many times Julia has effectively been outside a property, it's maybe on 2 occasions, right?
Yeah, and I think legally you could argue that would constitute a course of conduct. So out of the 4 points, 2 may have been ticked here. So the surveillance thing, and then we've got intimidation. I think you could argue that one in Julia's favour, because I don't think in any way, from what Julia has publicly proclaimed, that her behaviour was in any way intimidatory, and I don't think it was ever meant to be that way at all. And fourthly, it's interference through sabotage or attack. Well, you can write that one straight off. That there is no way. So out of the 4 pointers, there's 2 possibly that the prosecution could be looking at. Her phone will be seized. That will be subject to some sort of interrogation. And then, let's look at harassment, the actual act. And it comes from the Protection of Harassment Act that came out in 1997. And you've got to make a victim feel distressed, humiliated, threatened, or fear of violence, right? So the victim here will have to provide evidence, and if that evidence then goes before a court, there's every chance that victim will be called and challenged. So she may well end up having to go to court and rely on the so-called facts she's put in a statement, that she felt distressed, she felt humiliated, she felt threatened, or in fear of violence, or all combination of all of them.
Mm-hmm.
Whether they want to do that or not, I'm really, really not sure. And then with every offence, so the police at the very start of it, really. So someone reports it because they believe that an offence has been committed, and then the police turn up, or it's reported, and then they go through what they've got. And if they think they've got enough, they can either, proactively go out and pick the person up. They can circulate them as wanted, or they can just invite them in to come and have a chat. What makes me feel that there was a course of conduct in the police's eyes was that Julia was picked up at the airport. For me, as an investigator, that would tell me that she had what they call a JBOC, which is a Joint Borders something or other. It's an acronym for a multi-agency circulation. So that'll be with Special Branch, the Borders Agency, the police, Customs and Excise. She would have been flagged up. That would have been put to all travel companies, immigration departments. So they pretty much would have had her on a plane, knew she was on there, knew her seat number, and picked her up. I would have thought they would have picked her up actually on the plane. So they would have boarded the plane as it landed. Everyone remained on there, and the police turn up and drag her out from her seat. And then they'll have to interview her and ask her what her stance is. Now, she can only be expected to answer to evidence that's been put to her. If evidence isn't put to her, it is not her case to bolster the prosecution's case and fill in gaps. That's not her job. And a good solicitor will step in and say, in the absence of evidence, you're going to say no comment. And that may be the case. But then ordinarily, you'd bail someone pending inquiries. More information, more questions need to be put before the person. So a second interview may well should. But it looks like they've charged her. That is what I'm looking at. She's been remanded. So in order to charge, you need to prove the case. So with this indictment, you're looking at a course of conduct. So it must have been more than one occasion. There has to have been harassment. So that harassment, like we mentioned earlier, coming alarm, distress, or threat of violence, or whatever it might have been, that'll be down to the victim to